Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unloose the Goose, episode 29. I'm Nicole Sauce here with Xavier Hawk. Both of us were in Florida over the weekend celebrating the launch of Firon. It was a really good time. I met some really interesting people with a lot of different backgrounds and perspectives and ideas. And it was really fun to have that just gathering place. So thanks for hosting that party, Xavier. You did a good job on that one.
Well, thank you so much. I had a blast. Actually, I stayed up all night. I didn't actually go to sleep. So the party ended around 10. And then, I hung out with some people there, cleaned up, and then got back to the hotel where everybody was staying around like 1, something like that. And everybody was outside. So I ended up hanging out outside till like 2 something, and then got home around 3 something and was like, I can't, go to sleep and get up and do baseline. So I just did baseline in my suit that I was still in. And then when I finished that, my kids were pretty much waking up. And so I didn't sleep one bit. And then I had meetings at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and 11. And then by the time I wrapped up everything, my kids were coming home from school. So I ended up going to bed at like 10 p.m. And, that was that.
Yeah. Wow. So you didn't even get a nap after all that.
No naps.
Wow. I would have slept for like 2 days. So kudos to you for getting up again the next day and doing another baseline.
Yeah. Yep. I've committed to it. You know what I mean? Kind of like I've committed to this.
Well, tonight's Unloose the Goose episode is going to be a unique one. We're going to be talking about practical agorism. So implementing agorist tendencies or practices into your life. And I asked earlier today for some questions up on the MeWe group and on Telegram, and I have 5 or 6 from MeWe. Xavier has sent a link out inviting people to come on the show to talk about this topic in person. So we may have some fun guest appearances. We'll see as we get into the show tonight. But I'm going to start with the first question. This comes from Chad. And he says, should agorists avoid using the term agorist or agorism except when talking to other agorists? That's right. He got the word 3 times in one question. People have always done it or participated in it without using the name. Does it simply raise red flags? What do you think about that?
Honestly, I didn't know the word before I was on this podcast. I knew of agorism as the agora, and the idea of the open and honest communication of a variety or group of people to come to new ideas, to decide decisions together and work in harmony, right? So the marketplace of ideas, that's how I knew it. And I didn't know that there was a whole subset of people. I thought it was just libertarians, right? There's like fucking
Right.
bet on me, leave me alone. And then when I met Sal and, we all started chatting more, I realized like, oh, this is a whole like movement. But I don't know that many people outside of the movement know that it exists. Because anytime I've said, oh, it's an agorist podcast, they're all like, what's that? So it's like, then how do you, Nicole, explain agorism to people?
So I explain it as this unique concept that I can freely and openly trade with you something I have made. And so it's this idea that you don't need external regulations on the exchange of ideas or goods or services. And I actually don't use the word agorism much, except for when I'm trying to shortcut. Like if somebody asks me, what's this podcast about? Or what do you do? And I am not in the mood to talk.
Right.
We're agorists.
So it's basically like disintermediating the state. It is saying, get out of our business. Nicole and I are doing a deal here of whatever sort, and it does not involve you whatsoever, state or regulatory agencies. You don't give us permission. You don't tell us whether we can or cannot do business with each other. And ultimately, it's like anarchism, but with some foundational beliefs, I would say. Would you say correct? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, there is the idea that you are purposefully seeking out the gray areas where we can operate outside the system, right? Not just outside the state, but outside the system. And actually, Sal Mayweather, who has totally bogged on us for the show tonight, put this really cool meme up on the MeWe group, and it has all these people with their hands on the table. And it says conservatives, liberals, minarchists, ANCAPs, and ANCOMs. And it has agorists, and it says being oppressed. And the idea is this visual of all those fists is them being oppressed. There's this one guy with his fist out here, not there, off to the side, and it says agorist, and it focuses in on his face. And that's true, because you have what we have accepted as the system as we know it, and having to accept that the world works this way. And one of the cool things about agorism is we don't necessarily accept that, right? You look for, well, that just, works that way because people have gotten to the habit of that working that way. How can I move forward in a peaceful way and not mess with all that mess and just do my thing? And that's what has attracted me to the philosophy.
So it's almost like every cryptocurrency user is an agorist by default, even though they don't even know what the word is.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you think that there's a benefit for people to understand the word agorism and or the philosophy behind it? Like, because in libertarianism, let's say, there's a whole, like, it becomes a definition and a meme in and of itself. And then inside that, you get the splintering and people start infighting about what libertarianism means.
Yeah.
I mean, I see Pete all the time, or I used to when I was on Twitter, all the time, just arguing with people and basically, mocking all of these libertarians who would fight with each other about what is really libertarian and what's not. And you've got different institutes and different groups within that are all like trying to define it. And then when you have this defined culture, this defined movement, it's almost as if the minute that it is defined is the minute it begins its entropy cycle and starts dying. And so in some ways, I kind of look at agorism and like, let it be, let it be undefined, right? Like, yeah. It's almost like we've got this really cool thing going on, and the more people know about it, the quicker it gets ruined.
Well, and I'm right with you on that one. The first Libertarian National Convention I attended was in Portland, Oregon, and I was working a booth for an organization. Free State Project was actually right across the aisle from me, and a lot of the purpose of the conversations that people had with me was to stop by the booth, suspect that I'm really conservative and not a libertarian. That was first. Suspect that I'm really communist and not a libertarian, and then have the I'm more libertarian than you discussion about what I think, should all drugs be legal? And it was a very defensive interaction, and I was astounded by that. And I thought, we got to learn how to communicate better than this. I think with agorism, I think you're right on. If we really define it as these are the tenets and this is the only way it can be, and there's no flexibility, it pretty much goes against the entire concept, in my opinion, to lock it down. But it also sets the foundation for the I'm more agorist than you discussion.
Right. And then
Sal's more agorist than me, by the way, just for the record.
Sal's more agorist than any of us, I think. The idea of libertarianism versus agorism, let's say, libertarianism seems to be based in a political ideology, whereas agorism is more based on an economic ideology, or it's functionary in an economy rather than in a political arena, right? So they kind of go hand in hand. If you're an agorist, you're more likely a libertarian-leaning individual politically, but it seems to me that agorism goes even further and says, fuck your political ideologies, fuck your organized state, all of this nonsense, and let's just interact as human beings, as individuals, which is really all well and good, but it's, in my opinion, and Sal could argue with me on this if he were here, but it seems to me that you're limited in the amount of effectiveness that you can have as a individual or even as an economic unit. Like, I don't know how many agorists can actually become millionaires in the sense that, unless they're cryptocurrency people, right? Unless they stacked away a lot of Bitcoin early on, and then they're just like free. And they don't have to pay taxes, or they can transfer their crypto into fiat at a very low rate, so it looks like they're poor. Like, there's a lot of ways that they can behave in that way. But then again, it's the whole aspect of effectiveness in flipping the greater market. Like, it makes sense to be the free man beyond the wall, but that by definition inherently means that there is a wall and that there is another system. how do we get agorism or the tenets of agorism to be the system? And if that happens, does it mean that all these libertarian minded or agorist minded folks will then find another way to like rebel against that and go conservative? Like, are they just a contrary, or are they genuinely wanting a free and spiritually based economic system?
Well, that's an interesting point. Well, first of all, libertarian in politics, there's the big L libertarian and the little L. You've heard of this before, right?
I have. What the hell is that about?
Okay, it's what this means. Libertarian political party is an uppercase L because it's a proper noun, and they are looking to get people elected. A small L libertarian is somebody whose principles are based in the non-aggression principle.
Yeah.
And that is gonna, I mean, I can't think of an agorist who wants to force people to do things. So,
Right.
So that, Jack likes to say anarchists are libertarians. I think agorists are libertarians in the small L sense of that, right? And then there's just degrees and factions within the libertarian philosophy, just because people have had a lot of time to think about it. Yeah. And they're all, it's kind of based in Austrian economics and all of that other stuff, which is basically the philosophy of get the hell out of the way.
Yep. And it works to a degree. But then you have, like you said, all these factions. It really comes down to this definition and the self-definition, and then the self-appointed guardians of that status quo, whatever that is. So you've got libertarians fighting against libertarians, anarchists fighting against anarchists. All the way back to the freaking Rainbow Gathering, which is like the epitome of anarchism and agorism, because they're a bunch of hippies running into the woods and being like, we're going to build a utopia without structure, right? And we'll get together around, the sacred moons and the sacred times and this and that. And that's what'll bring us together. And then in that, you even have different camps or different, this is where I grew up, right? I grew up I wasn't in an agorist or libertarian household or community. I was anti-establishment in the sense that, like, I knew the system was fucked up, so let me find some alternatives. And I landed in the Rainbow family for a while. And there were some really cool things about it that I find in anarchism, in libertarianism, in agorism. And then there's a lot of the dirty, aspect to it, just the dirty kids. Without much comprehension of the grander society as a whole, other than how it's bad, right? And how do we structure a civilization on the tenets of non-aggression and voluntarism? And they had a lot of good ideas around it, but you always get that infighting, right? So how do you structure that, and how do you give a rule set to people who don't want a rule set?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm not sure what the best answer is. I look at how my community, my Living Free in Tennessee community is, and we don't have a lot of infighting.
Right.
We're also, a couple of thousand people. So I think as structures are in place where you can have an agenda, that's when you start having more infighting, when people find themselves dependent on the community for their livelihood. That you start, it's natural. The answer to the question at hand is the one that benefits me, right? Your self-interest is going to drive decisions that you make. And I think in our community right now, I just did a podcast about this today. Part of why we don't have a lot of drama is when people come in and try to do drama, nobody comes and punches them in the nose, right? Everybody just walks the other way.
Right.
And nobody really wants the drama around, and that has been very uniform. And when somebody is going through a time and it's starting to negatively impact the community, people come in, and there might be a talk in the background from somebody who says, hey, I noticed that you're putting a little bit too much negative in, because we want to be solutions oriented. We want to be positive. We want to support each other. It's not about, tearing people down or beating them up. And I think as structures get over regulated, that's when people start beating each other up. So agorism, if it's kept simple without a lot of rules, I think it sets a foundation to keep that from happening.
Yeah, yeah, and I think what in your example, you've got a tight knit community. It's not tens of thousands of people, right? It's like
Right.
Everybody kind of knows each other and has to deal with each other on a daily basis in such a way that it causes them to be nicer to one another, because they're generally of an intellectual bent enough, emotionally intelligent enough to know that if they start trouble in this discussion, it's going to bleed over into when they're, pulling vegetables together or roasting coffee with you or whatever.
Right.
And so it's like there's a natural self-policing that takes place. But when you start getting into larger groups, especially with the internet age and people talking shit to each other, that emotional intelligence quotient goes down. And so then how do you function with one another in such a way that it's intellectually stimulating, emotionally responsible, and functionarily results in good shit? The question for us as in this age is like, it's a meme war, right? We've got the ideologies of capitalism, communism, various religious isms, and they're all competing in the noosphere, the mental space of humanity. And it's like the one that is most efficient at meeting a certain set of goals will win. And if we agorists can demonstrate the benefit and the efficiency at the levels of what we operate at a local level, and are able to scale it globally or even nationally or even statewide, then we can compete in the marketplace of ideas. Fuck the political spectrum or the political ideologies or any of that. Let's just outperform them economically, right? And then it'll cause everybody to stop and take notice. But to do that, it's almost like whenever you take an action, you begin the stage of entropy. Like the death of you is built into the action that you take. So the minute we call ourselves agorists, then everybody tries to lump us in with some kind of political ideology or economic ideology, whatever. And then it's like you're defending against their mental bullshit that doesn't even have anything to do with anything. It's like they can't see the real functional benefits of it in the midst of a name, in the midst of their own ideas of what that name is. Because they'll see examples like, as far as I know, we Unloose the Goose are like the agorists in the community that are actually saying stuff. Are there other?
Can I think? Well, Vin Armani, who was a goose at one point.
Well, I still consider him a goose, even though
he'll always be a goose. That's a good question.
As far as I understand, we are it, and forgive me if there's anybody out there who is an it that's more than this, but
I'm sure there are its who are bigger its than we are. And now they're going to reach out to us and want to be on the show, and that's cool because we can do interview shows.
Yeah, because we only allow bigger its that are not piece of it.
Bigger its.
No piece of it on the show.
It's a Stephen King novel all of a sudden around here. I've got to get my clown face out.
Yeah, no, I encourage anybody who's of the agorist mentality and understands what this is about. Because in my mind, it's like it's a burgeoning sort of set. We've all been like kind of pushed to this, and now we're trying to find a definition for it. And I don't know who coined the term agorism other than in the marketplace of ideas, right? But we're talking about a market, like a real marketplace, and taking the marketplace of ideas and turning it into a marketplace of like a functional economy outside the rule sets of the state.
Well, Konkin, I think, kind of coined the term within the context of what we're talking about here. And this is where it's really sad that Sal is not on this, because I don't think we've made it through an episode of Unloose the Goose without him citing Konkin.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
So I have a confession to make to everybody publicly. I am an agorist who has not read Konkin. I just ordered a book because I've come to this philosophy through the Austrian economics standpoint. So by reading Mises and Hayek and those sorts of things. And so when I stumbled upon the term agorism, I was like, oh yeah, it's all of these things. It makes sense. Go forth and start doing stuff, which is what I do.
Yeah, I came to it from common sense. I didn't need a Konkin or a Mises or any of these fellows to really, in Bitcoin, I learned a lot about Austrian economics.
Right.
And in coming from the Bitcoin place and being one of the originals there and understanding, my whole foray into this started when I had my community in North Carolina. And I was like, how do I pay my people, them pay rent without having to go through the state first? It's kind of like, why grow the chickens in the United States, ship them to China to be processed, and then back here? It's like all of that extra bullshit that was not needed.
Right.
We're working in community and partnership and cooperation, and that's nobody's business. So it was just common sense. Solutions that I was looking for in terms of alternative currencies or complementary currencies, which led me to Bitcoin. So it's like I have what I consider like a piece to the puzzle economically and socioeconomically. And so this term agorism was sort of like foisted on me, and I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Like it does. All of the people tend to get heady about a lot of these things when really it's about how can you function within today's society, in the current economic system, find your spaces in entrepreneurialism and in tech development. It's like, where are the white spaces where nobody's doing business or where nobody's building something, and then go build something there, right? And so we're doing that in the agorist community with like gardening, garage sales, 3D printers go burr, in the term of Sal, cryptocurrency, like Firon, right? It's like your coffee, in your community, and then farmers markets, growing vegetables, CSAs, and I think garage sales is a big one too, because really what you're looking for is you're looking for cash businesses that you can either, if you're a hardcore gray market person, not declare, which I'm guessing that a lot of our topics, our questions this evening was around that. You had mentioned.
Yeah, it was a lot about that.
Yeah, it's like, well, why do you think people buy cash businesses? Like, because what you're talking about is you're talking about laundering money. So let's just talk about it from an educational standpoint without any implications that this is a good idea. This is not a good idea, right?
This is not a good idea.
Right.
It can get you in big trouble.
I don't do it. Nicole doesn't. Yeah. Nicole doesn't do it. And
theoretically, though,
this is how it's done.
If one had a cash business, what would they do? Well, can we back up before we jump here?
Okay.
Because before we move off the term of agorism and community and control, something that has been cool about this podcast is we talked about spirituality, we've talked about personal health and the whole person. So I think what is important as an agorist is to take care of your whole person, mental health, spiritual health, your body, all of it, your financial health, so that when you come to the community, you're not that bad actor. So that just as an aside.
Yeah.
So back to laundering money, which we don't advise that you do.
Well, you just brought up a really cool point. So there are so many aspects of agorism that are just inherent in like the spiritual development growth, the personal development of a human being. We are sovereign individuals. When we are fully self-determined, then we're not counting on anybody else to take care of us. Mm-hmm. And if we're not counting on anybody else to take care of us, they have no say in our destiny. The minute we proxy our self-care or our self-determination to someone else, that begins the process of them determining our fate. It's kind of like going to a job and being told how much you're worth.
Or what hours you have to work.
Right. Exactly. And it might not be what you naturally work in or you fit in, and it might not be the best. So if you want that freedom of being completely self-determined, then you have to have the responsibility of taking care of your economics, taking care of your body, taking care of your health, your emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being. So you become a holistically engaged being, right? And you have to engage your intelligence and figure out, okay, this is how the system works. How can I fit in it to best benefit me? And how can I do that in such a way that it best benefits the community, and that hopefully people learn from my behaviors or my businesses or my entrepreneurial spirit, or, in Jack's case, my podcast or whatever, so that they can find more freedom for themselves. But they have to be willing to take on all that responsibility. Nobody's going to do it for you. And that's a hard process for some people.
Well, it's hard when you're used to not having to take responsibility, right? It's scary.
Yeah.
And I think we have some other questions coming up that ask about analysis paralysis. I think that's part of what leads to it. I will say we have some interesting comments on YouTube. There's a ton of people out doing it, and I think that's true. The key word is doing. People are commenting, not in all caps, so I have to have my glasses on to see it. But I think agorists, as you go into this lifestyle, you do stuff. And sometimes you're so busy doing stuff, you're not looking for other people with the same label doing stuff. So that's why we're sitting here going, I can't think of anybody. But I remember when we started this podcast, I got probably 15 emails of why don't you have this person on there? And the answer was we wanted to get the chemistry among the hosts that we had now before we started adding more.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a good time. We should start interviewing as a group, different personalities, like people from the Mises Institute, and have them on and answering questions where we kind of moderate, and just have a group discussion with them. I think that would be a nice way that we grow. In terms of the tax thing, so let's say you have a gray or black market business and you sell drugs and you're making a lot of cash, right? And the way people do that, the way the cartels do that, and they have cash businesses like laundromats, or where you put the coins in the machines and they fluff their numbers. Essentially, they say they're getting more business than they actually are, or a barbershop, or things like that. And as part of the reason why Agenda 2030 is happening, John would be able to speak to this well, is they want to move to a cashless system to be able to prevent. I mean, this is one of the good things about it, right? And this is where he's going to think I'm, Illuminati or some shit. But the part of the good thing is that you don't have money laundering, which is how the bad guys make their bad winnings look legit. So back to the tax avoidance, it's more of like money laundering. They get these cash businesses, and maybe they have $1,000 worth of business happening a month, but they can put all of their cash through that business and make it look like, oh, there's $10,000 a month coming through. So then they're getting all this legitimate business, and they're willing to pay the taxes on it because they've got it illegitimately and they don't know how to get it back into circulation.
Right. So, and they want to spend it.
Yeah, they want to spend it, and they can only do that by putting it into their bank, and the only way they can do that is by legitimately through like a cash-based business. So that's not tax avoidance, that's like tax incursion. They want that, they want that tax.
Right.
But if you're talking about like tax avoidance, it's just don't like even
it's kind of the opposite of what you just explained, right?
It's the opposite, but I'm trying to make a point here is like the criminals want the taxes, right? Because that engages them in a it's like if you're making money outside the system, they're gonna find it. And so the trick, it's not about getting money outside the system. That's the easy part. It's how not to get got and get hit in the pokey. You need to have a way to actually make it look legit. Unless you want to stay so insignificant, right? Like you just want to subsist. You're a farmer and you just want to basically subsist. You don't want vacations. You don't want to travel. You don't want a car, things like that. Then fine, go do your whatever it is to make that money for yourself. And then you don't have to declare it, like artists, or you're selling something on Etsy, a big place where people are doing that is OnlyFans. I kept reading memes about how all these OnlyFans girls would they'd turn somebody down or something, and then they'd get reported to the IRS, and then they would the IRS would slam them hard, fines and shit. So definitely I'm not recommending tax avoidance. Now you, Nicole, me, Jack, for sure, it's like we know how to structure our business and all of our expenses so that we look like we're not making a lot of money, but really all the things that we have to do anyway are business write-offs, dinner with a client, that's a total write-off. Gas, car payment.
50% write-off, but yeah,
exactly. So you get all of these things that you would have to do as a function of your life anyway, but just so also happen to be a function of your business. So it's less about tax avoidance and more about tax management, right?
Minimization. Well, so that's like when you have a business, the money comes into the business, you pay all your expenses, and then what's left is what you pay tax on. When you have a job, money comes in, you pay your taxes, and then what's left is for all of your expenses. Does that mean that the $20 tip I gave the tow truck driver who bailed me out yesterday to get me home is an expense? No, because I write off miles. And so my things I spend on my actual car are personal expenses that comes out of the money that comes to me, right? But what I've done is spent time learning tax code, and I continue to learn more. So I know what I can choose to take a risk on expensing or not. Because I think the thing, when somebody asks, how do I avoid paying taxes or how do I get ballsy enough to do that? The answer is decide what your risk tolerance is, find out what the consequences are, and then decide what you're going to do. And then you just do it. But the way business tax is set up in our country is completely as a way to avoid paying as many taxes. That's the whole structure is set up to do that.
It's set up to help business owners, especially smart ones, not pay taxes. That's there's actually a lot of really interesting ways to do that with real estate. And so you have a lot of, let's say you make a bunch of money, a big windfall, $50 million, right?
Yeah.
You will have to pay half of that or 40% of that or whatever into the federal system.
Right.
A way to avoid that is like they go and buy real estate and just dump it in, and that goes on the negative on their balance sheet because now they owe money for all of those places, and
capital
it goes
loss.
exactly. But they're really invested in a real asset that gives them on their personal balance sheets a net worth that increases where they can take more credit. So the idea is to leverage debt. And so it energetically, from a spiritual perspective, it's not such a great idea because then you're diffuse. Your power is not contained in liquidity, which is the most powerful position. But how do you attain liquidity without having it taken in the form of taxes? So there's a lot of creative ways to do that, but leveraging property and investments is a big way, especially if you can do like life insurances and different kind of personal banking ways. Have you ever heard about cash flow life insurance policies?
I haven't looked into them much because it has not been something that I needed to look at. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. No, they're really cool in the sense that so if you put money in a bank, you're earning like very little interest, right? But if you put them into a cash flow life insurance policy, it's like you're putting money into the policy that if you die, somebody gets paid, right? But you can get these cash flow policies where you can borrow that money. Let's say you put in over the course of a year or two, $100,000 in there. And then you need liquidity for a house or whatever, a business you want to start, and you want 20K. So you can borrow from your death policy, your life insurance policy, and it's money that you technically owe, so you're not paying taxes on it, right? So you're getting this money that you put in a while, like over a course of time in your premium payments, and then you borrow it from that. So you're borrowing it from yourself, your own policy.
Right.
And so it goes as a negative on your balance sheet that you don't owe taxes on. So it's one of those creative ways that you can do tax avoidance. It's not tax avoidance, it's really just tax management, right? And proper use of leveraging debt, where you actually have functional debt that you can use and build more wealth from.
Right.
So that's an interesting strategy.
Well, this is perfect because I have Waylena saying, how's avoidance different from mine, which is from my podcast? I call it Money I Never Earned.
Yeah.
So Money I Never Earned is if somebody were to hypothetically come to my house and buy a jar of my canned beets and hand me $5 for that.
Right.
It may or may not go on the balance sheet, right? It could just go in a jar that has a sticker on it that says mine, and I keep it all. That's Jack calls it fence post money. Not saying I do that per se, but it's something a person could easily do.
Totally. But then again, that's the minute it starts becoming newsworthy is the minute you start being in the danger zone.
Right.
If you're
the $5 they don't care about.
Right. You're doing a garage sale, the IRS is not going to come after you for your garage sale bits, right?
It's a lot of states say for used things anyway, you don't have to mess with it. Like they're
Yep. And you're operating at such a low volume that it's really minuscule, and so that's why I said opened up the statement with, if you're going to do it and you don't want a car and don't want to travel and don't want to have the amenities, like Nobody's going to care if you're poor and avoiding doing that. It's when you become really wealthy or you start making a big mark on the market that that you start becoming a target. That's good. You become a mark on the market, you start becoming a target.
Yeah, you're gonna make another T-shirt.
Freestyle rap there.
I don't know. Liberty is the new punk is still my favorite Xavier Hawk quote.
Yeah, I like that. I gave the ladies organizing the party the choice between like the choice is yours and liberty is the new punk, and they're like, there's no choice there. It's liberty.
Yeah. So I think in answer to Waylena's question, though, avoidance is when you're looking for ways to not pay tax by using like your idea of the what is it called? Life insurance,
cash flow life
insurance, or structuring your business so your expenses come out before as many expenses come out as possible, so you don't have a huge profit to pay taxes on at the end, or choosing to live in places that don't have high taxes, that have structures where you can get around things. Because, you know, in my state, and I'm sure in yours, county by county, depending on where you choose to live, higher or lower taxes. Anywhere from hotel tax to grocery tax to wheel tax to property tax. We just had somebody try to join and then they disappeared.
Here's another way that's a more high-end way for and why people get into real estate. So let's say you get a $100 million high rise, okay?
Yeah.
And it has a whole bunch of units in it, and you are able to take basically like financing against the place, and you get, I don't know, like a $6 million financing, right?
Right.
And or your premium, you're paying. Let's say you're paying on that 100 million, you put 10 million down, you've got 90 million left, you're financing that, and the rent that you charge for all of those units gives you pretty much your mortgage payment, right? You can actually borrow against the equity of the value of the property, right? And that 90 million that you still have to pay, you can borrow that. You can borrow pretty much double that, or let's say 2 million, let's even just say $10 million more than that, right? The full value of the place, the 100 million. And then you have people paying the rent. So then they are effectively paying that loan back. And then whatever's left over is yours as debt, non-taxable debt. So let me say it again. You've got $100 million property. You owe 90 million on it. The rent pays the premiums for that 90 million, not the interest. It just pays the premium, right, on that loan. If you're borrowing essentially $10 million tax-free each year, and you just refinance each year, and you've got like $10 million that's completely tax-free because it's debt. Like there's some really creative ways to play with debt and tax avoidance or tax mitigation. It's really just restructuring your thinking around what is debt and how can you leverage that.
And you need to have a certain amount of capital going in.
Well, for something like that, yes. But like,
so we have somebody coming on here. Do you see that, Diana?
Oh no, but I know Diana. She was at the party actually.
Yeah, she's coming in to talk to us. So
you have to click her in. And
I admitted her. I left her on hold too long because you were finishing something and she disappeared. But it looks like she tried again. So when she gets her mic on, we will say hello to Diana.
Cool. She's got a property in Mexico. She's working on building communities as well.
Oh, cool.
So that she's actually somebody that I wanted you to talk to when you were there. When she comes on, she can tell you a little bit about it.
I wonder if I met her.
She wants to use the Firon management system and currency system potentially in her developments. I think she has a hotel. Diana, are you there?
Just needs to unmute.
Hi.
Diana.
Hey,
hello.
What's up?
Hi, guys.
Good to see you.
Yay, good to see you too.
Yay. So Diana had this beautiful like gold thing that was going across her
She was
head.
sitting in the seat in front of me on the bus.
That's right.
Oh yes,
well, I didn't see the bus,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was super sweet.
Yeah. So tell us about your project and your property and how you're building it.
Okay, so we started this project. This project is like the seed that I'm leaving for the world with my whole life experience. Like I traveled the world for since I was 18 years old. Like I went out of school and I was like out of high school and I was like super not motivated. So I needed inspiration. I started traveling. I was a DJ at that time. And then I went to live to Ibiza, which is like this beautiful place that gets together
Ibiza.
like,
Yes.
yeah, Ibiza. Art and a lot of love and a lot of money. So there's like a lot of abundance there and a lot of inspiration. And I got to meet like all these great people. So then 10 years after, I got pregnant and I have my kid, 10-year-old. And the motherhood, like at that moment, I went to this like super hell, like a very dark place of myself because I had like this horrible relationship. So I found out like the only way to be happy is within us, and I
Yeah.
learned to do that after a lot of years, and now like I'm practicing it as I told you.
Right.
So then like I'm making the long story very short. So then with my best friend, we were going to buy a house, and then we didn't find like anything that was really what we imagined. So we decided to do a residential where we could actually like customize and optimize all of our resources. I love intimate space and I love also the community, but I'm a very like, I love to be alone and I love to, like have my little cocoon.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's how it started. Like we just thought it was very easy and simple, and like how it is to raise a company. So now we laugh at ourselves. But in the end, like, because everything always falls in place when your mind is well set. I don't know if that's the way to say it. So we found like we were imagining all these houses like Zaha Hadid style or whatever, and then we found like the perfect architects that have actually worked with this firm, and they have developed a series of investigation for NASA and whatever. So like a lot of different things. So in the end, we designed this minimum viable product, which is the one that I sent you. Like it's these little chrysalis.
Yeah.
And these are like high-tech design houses. It's like pop-up structures, Lego type. So we believe like our house should be the playground, right? And we should like, I believe in the state of art. I believe like to use the technology for human growth. And I believe we have already everything, like our own abilities is everything that we need, like creativity, like everything that we already know how to use. And we just we must practice this. So each house must be an avatar of the user and like permit the user to explore and express themselves, to be able to leave the seed in the world. Because I believe what's happening in the world is just because we are like feeling very unsatisfied with our own lives, and then because we induce our state of peace into all forms of life, this is actually what the world is, or the planet is actually lacking, like beings that are feeling complete and are feeling well.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm trying to promote, like for people to really, this is something that you're saying also in the Firen that I watched, like the permaculture, right? Like if we all follow one tendency, even if it looks like super good, just because it's based in the material world, and I call the material world like everything, like our body, everything that we can see and touch and hear, and that's what I call the material world, which would be like the effect of mind, of divine mind. So I believe like we have to go to cause, which is us, or which is life, the same, and then like express from there. And that way, like we should all be expressing like our own system and cooperating with the general system, and that way like life balances itself, right? So we have to stop being like, I don't know, like afraid of expressing ourselves. And that's the project.
That's the basis of agorism, right? We were talking about that before you came on, and how, when you want to take full responsibility for yourself, you have to do it at all the different levels: growing your own food, producing your own power, taking care of your body systems, taking care of your emotional, mental state, making your own business. How is your organization or your company or your project, how is it structured business-wise?
Okay, so there's this business structure, corporation structure in Mexico called SAPI, which is like a normal corporation, but this is kind of new. So we are prepared, like it has like different kind of shares, so you can include a lot of different types of investment.
Yeah.
So we could be a bank, we could be
It's
whatever.
like a cooperative, right? Or like a B Corp in the United States.
It's not a cooperative. I didn't do it as a cooperative in the beginning because I believe that one individual should express itself, and then from there, like from this completeness, should share that ability to all other individuals, but not look for the collective strength, because the moment we go out of ourselves, we unconsciously believe we depend on the collective strength, and then we start asking others to do what we want. So this is something I really don't want in because I've fallen there in the gifting economy, and I don't think it made to anybody. So I'm trying now, this is why I found FireRun, because I'm trying to create a structure with this structure of membership that we can share the utility of the company with all the members. I believe through real estate and the growing our, like the self-sufficiency should be enough for the whole world to be doing whatever they want or whatever we want. I think there's enough revenue. So that's what I'm trying to find with you guys, like a very intelligent way of just sharing voluntarily what we do in life.
How is the tax structure in Mexico? What is that like? Are you familiar with the United States tax code or tax structures?
Yeah, I mean, we pay a lot of taxes here. I believe, because I work with the mind, and I already told you, like, I don't fall into the effect. I don't care to pay taxes. I believe we are still self-sufficient, and we should be able to live very well with whatever we have other than taxes. Like, I believe in harmony. So that's not something that actually worries me. I think because the houses we made are like so fucking great that they're very cheap compared to the market. So we could raise the price and people would would still pay the price, and we would still have a lot of revenue, other, like, I don't know how to say it, but like over the taxes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we pay a lot of taxes here.
I wonder if is it more in Mexico? I know in some
16%.
How much is that?
And then there is the ISR, which is another % when it's services.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a lot. Yeah, but I want to really promote, like, not to fight the system, but to add value to it. And the only thing that can actually add value from my point of view is harmony. So I think we have and we can, like, do great things, like over taxes, and then, like, show really the world how we can, like, create peace within peace, like.
Nicole, in your community, do you have like a central LLC or company for the holler, or is it everybody just cooperating and it's sort of like an informal community? How is it structured there?
First of all, I do want to point out we have somebody else on.
Oh yeah.
John.
Oh look, yeah, there you are.
Yeah. I'll answer the question, then we can introduce John.
Okay.
So we do not have an LLC organizing us. I have an S corporation, and the person next door has an S corporation. Actually, there are 3 corporations here. And I've been exploring the idea of a private membership club.
Yeah.
That's where I'm looking right now, but I don't know how that crosses state lines, and because I don't want to do it just for the neighbors, right? Because the community spans the world, really, but mostly Tennessee and the United States.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if we could have a membership or a church or whatever the legal definition needs to be, to be able to facilitate trading with each other separate from, or you know, because they're
totally.
in
That's why I
private
like
membership organizations, you can do things that are technically regulated locally.
Yeah.
Even though you're there. That's how resorts serve alcohol in counties that don't allow alcohol. But there's a certain point where whatever that thing is you want to do in the membership, if the government's decided it's illegal, it's illegal. But I see a lot of potential for stepping outside of some of the over regulation that is in and becoming stronger and stronger in this country.
Yeah,
particularly the USDA and the FDA, which are the two that just.
Yep, that's why I've been looking at from the jump a cooperative, which is basically like a membership corporation, where everybody are part owners. So it's like you actually are not doing business with multiple entities. You're doing business as one entity, and there's a lot of cool things you can do there without all of the regulatory burden, right?
Right.
But yes, you mentioned John. Welcome, John.
Hi, John.
Hello, how are you?
Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, appreciate you.
No worries. I feel like a celebrity now. This is great.
You are, man. I'm looking at you and I'm like, why isn't he on the show all the time? So I'm seeing your group chat. You said another good example of tax strategy is mileage reimbursement, which is very true. So if you own your own business and you're going any fucking where, like that's a tax write-off right there, right? Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm fortunate enough to own my own business, and one of the tax strategies that I think is in reach for most people, that is often overlooked, is the mileage reimbursement. So, vehicles, especially if you're in a business where you have to drive someplace. Our particular business is broadly sales across a relatively large geographic area. So there's two options that we can use for tax strategy there. I could have the business buy my truck, and the business could buy my truck, and then I drive the truck on business usage, and then I have to segregate the personal mileage versus the business mileage. Or I can just buy the truck myself and have the business reimburse me for mileage driven on business. By far, when I talk to our CPA or when I talk to anybody else, the best way to do it is option number 2, because it's really complicated to have a business buy a truck and then try to break out personal mileage versus business mileage. And God forbid, if you ever get audited, it's a nightmare. But for the most part, I just keep a log of where I drive on business, and I have the business cut me a check every month for if I drive 5,000 miles that month. I hope it's not that much, but if I drive 5,000 miles that month, the IRS says I can reimburse myself for 56 cents on that mileage, right? And that's a lot of tax-free money coming out of the business every year, right? So,
Yep.
So anyway, everybody always forgets that one. But if you have even like a CSA business, if you're driving to the farmer's market, I'm not sure if you could expense that. You probably could, actually. I would check. That's a good place.
I'm pretty sure you can, because that's not driving. Because they will say you can't drive to work, like an Uber driver. The drive from your home to the first pickup, you can't expense, but then everything from there and the drive home you can. But with a CSA, you're driving different places. I don't think they're going to make the argument.
Yeah. So tell us about your sales business, John. Tell us a little bit about what's your superpower and what do you do?
Sure. My superpower. Oh man. My superpower is getting on Zoom chats with Mr. Baseline and Nicole Sauce. No, we're a manufacturer's representative business. So it's a very boring business and nobody knows anything about, but it's a relatively common way to help other companies sell their products. So in 30 seconds or less, there are small to mid-sized manufacturers out there who make stuff, and they need to get that stuff to a buyer. And we basically take their product and we function as sales engineers for the product and sell it into manufacturing plants all over our little region here in Ohio, Kentucky, Western PA. So that sounds really boring, but it's actually super cool because I get to see how everything is made. Literally everything, from food to steel to cars, airplanes, all that stuff.
That's so dope. Give us an example of something really cool that not many people would know, but that you're in a position to have seen, that other people would be like, holy shit, I never knew that.
Oh man.
You want to think about it? We can come back to it.
Okay. So do you know what a drumstick is? Like what was that?
These?
Those?
Oh, say again.
Drumsticks?
Oh, no. Much better, actually. So like
the ice cream?
The drumsticks. So like the ice cream cones, they have like
Okay,
the
yeah.
like
Oh,
the nuts
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
I love those.
yeah. So I live in Ohio, and everything awesome is made in Ohio because everybody always forgets about us, that we exist, except when it's like an election season or something. But everything awesome is made in Ohio.
Like me.
So those drumsticks are made in Ohio, and yeah, there you go. A project that I just worked on last week was increasing the throughput of like the machine. It's a very complicated machine that it puts like the nuts on top of the ice cream. It sounds so silly, but this is very serious business, right? I eat drumsticks. My kids eat drumsticks. You know, everybody eats drumsticks, and we got to make more drumsticks. So it's kind of fun.
That's awesome. So they were like reconfiguring the ice cream dispenser of the drumstick to increase the throughput.
It's the
increase the throughput and
the nut throughput.
It's all about
the cones have to move fast enough. I imagine that all works.
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool.
It is super silly, but there is a lot of math and physics that goes into like optimal like peanut crumble placement on top of ice cream cones. It's crazy stuff, but
I bet.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so this is totally off topic, but does it shoot like all the nuts at once, like at the ice cream, and they're all aimed? Like I'm just picturing this like thing like a hairdresser thing that comes down on the cone and just like shoots the nuts in.
So kind of. So hopefully not giving away too many trade secrets here, but the cones, they actually dip it into they dip the cones into the nuts. So ice cream production is mostly done at room temperature, which is crazy. So the ice cream is much more fluid, and they just pick the right temperature where it's not so fluid that it falls out of the cone, but it's fluid enough where things will stick to it and they can manipulate it. But it's all upside down, and they're dipping it at a very high rate into a trough and kind of doing it that way. So,
wow. Imagine being an ice cream engineer who has to figure out the right temperature and like how to build the equipment.
That sounds like a lot of fun experimentation to me.
It does, right? Like totally. So,
yeah.
Okay, so I think we should do, this is probably a good idea for future episodes, Nicole, doing like a full tax management, for agri.
Yeah.
I think that's something that would be really helpful for
everybody. Know an Agorism tax advisor. I should see if he would come on the show.
Do you?
I do. I don't know if he's willing to come on the show.
Oh, we should.
He is just launching a business specializing, and he's a tax lawyer, tax attorney.
Well, if he's a tax attorney and
specializing in advising agorists on how to set up their businesses,
we have many hundreds of agorists right there waiting for him, so he could drum up some business, and we could get some real good value for our crew at that.
Just way. Like I was thinking, Neti, I don't know how to say, Bali. She does the farm to table meat riot. She's figured out how to make a food church so that you can buy non-USDA inspected beef.
Really?
Yes. We should get her on the show too.
That would be cool. I've been wanting to do a farm to table experience at various Firon hubs. Like we could do one at Diana's, we could do one at my place, we could do one at your place.
Yeah.
I know that's a big deal. Like get like an industry chef that everybody knows or has heard of, and then have them come and do like pick all the come and walk through, look at our gardens and say, oh, we could use this, and this, and then make an experience.
I have a chef here we could use for that.
That'd be awesome.
And he grows a bunch of his stuff too. So.
Well, yeah, that would be a fun thing, right? That would be a fun in real life kind of gathering that we could do as well. So that's very cool. What other questions have you got in the?
Okay. Wait, I want to answer this one because I had to laugh when I saw it.
Okay.
How do you minimize the risk of getting caught if you decide not to file your tax return?
Oh, God. Diane.
Anybody want to answer that? Diana. Harmony with the tax code. Answer that.
Listen, I actually work everything in mind. Like I when I say it, I mean it. I don't go out of feeling like it's the perfect harmony that creates everything.
Mm-hmm.
David's here. So we just flow with the rules, with the actual rules, and then we find the best way to use what we have.
What she said. Yep.
Yep.
John, how about you?
You want to answer the best way not to get caught if you decide not to file your tax return? What say you, John?
Yeah, so I would always say follow the get a good CPA and follow the tax code, because Jack is 100% right on this, where the tax code is written entirely for people who own their own businesses and have the wherewithal to figure out how to get around it. So, they will crack down on you hard. We've been audited twice in our history in 20 something years in business, and it sucks. Like they will dig hard and they will dig deep, and you really don't want to, it's not a pleasant experience, right? So you have to make sure that everything's legit, but as long as you're following their rules, they can't really hold you accountable for that, right? So I would say stay within the law, but it's good money spent on a CPA who can help you figure out how to skirt as much of that as possible.
Yeah, I would agree with both of them. And Nicole, I'll let you answer last. Is that cool?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I agree with both of them. I think it's important that you actually pay all your taxes and use the tax code that's there to help you learn about it. This goes along with agorism. You take responsibility for yourself, you take responsibility for your finances, you take responsibility within the framework that you find yourself in to find how to grow best and find your way out of it, let's say. So yeah.
Something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think also, at least here in Mexico, there's a lot of way of using the taxes on your favor.
Yep.
And that's why we believe real estate should go to art, because the creative industries are the leader in economy in the world. Like if you see the statistics, like it's amazing. Like you can faint.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. And the other, there's a lot of like programs or grants that are for exactly that, for using the taxes towards art and good living. So if we just find their strategies, and I love strategy, that's the way, I think.
Yeah. Nicole.
Okay, so I'm going to go into hypothetical land here again about tax returns and not filing them. If, hypothetically speaking, your parents never made you a birth certificate and you don't have a social security number and you've never actually existed in the eyes of the government, then it's probably a much lower risk of getting caught if you don't file a tax return. That said, your employer cannot pay you as an employee in that situation. So you're going to have to figure out how to go through life around the edges of the system. People do this. I've met people who do this.
You've met people without social security numbers and all of that? And
no birth certificates.
Really?
Really hard to leave the country, though.
Yeah, I bet. You can get passports, like international. There's like a world passport for refugees. You can do that.
So if you're committed to this and have lived your life this way, your risk of getting caught are very low.
Yeah.
And you're probably also not running a multi-billion-dollar corporation at that point. I mean, it's going to go back to you're
getting hand-me-down cars.
Probably live just fine in that way, but it's not going to be a big, it's harder to earn income without being on books. That said, a lot of our economy happens that way, right?
Yeah.
That is a reality of our economy. If you have filed a tax return and then you don't file a tax return, guess who's going to know?
Yeah.
They're going to notice. I have missed tax returns in my past, and they send you a letter.
A nice little letter. So where the hell are you?
Now, the reason you might not file a tax return would be that you earn so little that you don't have to. But if they decide to audit you and they dig through all your accounts and you're lying, then you're lying. So I think this question is one where you need to make a determination of how are you going to put your flag in the ground for freedom. Is it by being fined by the IRS for not filing your tax return, even though you earn money? Or is it some other way? Is it by minimizing the amount of tax? And I've personally decided the second, right? I don't need to not pay taxes as a matter of course because it's what I stand up for. I do imagine people who have gone completely crypto for their entire life and all of their transactions probably don't have a good way to file a tax return because they're not coming back out into into US dollars. So I mean, that would be another legitimate way, probably, although depending on who's up your butt.
In some ways, I was really lucky for being hacked for $14 million because I was not culpable for that in taxes. Like, I had it for a very short period of time, you know, not enough to actually do anything with in that way, and lost it all. So there was, you know, there was no, I actually didn't have like a tax burden. And even last year, 2020, you know, didn't really have anything in terms of tax burden. This year, 2021, I will, you know, and because Firearm's actually doing well this year, but you know, just like everybody else, 2020 was a hard year in that regard. But it was a hard thing for most crypto people in the very beginning because there was no regulation around it. There was no tracing. There was no ability to trace it. So people got away with a lot at that time. But now, like, places like Coinbase will audit. They'll send in paperwork on your behalf, so you have to file, especially if you. But that's why there are all these privacy coins now. Like, the people in the crypto game. And this was an interesting reason why the crypto bubble kind of thing happened, was because all of these young folks under 30 basically started making millions of dollars. And they're like, I can't go back into the fiat system with this, or else I'm going to have to pay all these taxes and lose all of it. So they had to find the next thing to invest in and build. And so you're having like this expansion. I kind of see it as like dendrites in the brain stem, or like fungi, you know, in their root stems. They're having to find new and deeper ways to invest. And that's why the DeFi market started. That's why we've got all these things like NFTs. It's like everybody would pump into the next altcoin because they would pump and dump. It would just be to keep the money moving, because to sit on it didn't make any sense. So like they kept trying to build and build. And that's what's been growing this alternative economy, which is really an agorist economy. Like, there is absolutely zero way that the IRS can go after anybody in the DeFi market, because it's totally decentralized. There's no way in and out of coins, or from coins to fiat, you know. And so what's happening is now people are beginning to use cryptocurrency as a form of payment, but we still have the problem of, well, USDC and USDT, they're stable coins pegged to the US dollar.
Right.
So people are using those to transact now, which is really cool. Because then people who are crypto savvy will then take that and go turn it back into crypto. And there's really nothing that the IRS or any state can have to do with that kind of a business.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exploration to be done, or discussion, not exploration. There's probably already been a lot of exploration about, do you run a business as your second business that's 100% crypto if you have a business already? Do you start another one that just never comes out? So...
Well, that's where it gets into what I was talking about earlier, right? You know, you have to actually make your money look legit, right? And that's where we learn a lot from the cartels.
They have a lot to teach. So did the government, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we have somebody new joining us, Naya. Naya was actually on our last, I believe, on our last chat. She was on a fireside chat that I had this Monday. And she is sort of new to this whole thing, and she started using Curtis's methods for spin farming. And
cool.
Yeah. So Naya, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your superpower?
As soon as she gets her mic hooked up, she would.
Oh yeah, I see it. Her mic is not attached yet.
I don't know why.
How are we doing on time? It's 9:30. We've been here for an hour. How many more questions have we got?
Well, let's see. I've got... You want to do the violence one? How does agorism implement the principle of justice when one individual is harmed by another?
Yeah.
From Francisco.
Okay, so let's talk about prison, right? For the most part, in a lot of different prisons, the guards have a sort of laissez-faire. They're not trying to break up fights because they're outnumbered, and you know it would be a dangerous situation. So what they do is there's a rule set in the culture of the prisons on how things are handled, right? And I learned this from an interesting individual, that they're what are called like pods or groups. And if you think that our culture, Western culture, is racist, like spend some time in a federal prison, and then come out and tell us that, you know, our culture outside of the walls are racist. Because inside, the way it's structured is strictly based on race. You don't hang out with your not race, the race that you're not, right? All the white folks over here, all the native folks over here, all the Latinos over here, and then within the Latinos, they have their own breakups of who's who and who do they accept, and then all of the African American folks, right? And even like there are subsets within them, but that's the primary breakout. And they police themselves. And the leader of each tribe, and that's the way they run it, it's tribal and it's based on race. And the leader of each tribe is the one who is expected to end whatever conflict there are between the various tribes, if a conflict happens between the tribes. And so, it's a really agorist system in there, believe it or not, because again, the guards do not want to get in the middle of a battle between different people because again, they're totally outnumbered. So if you have beef, like let's say John and I are in a different tribe and we have beef, and Nicole, you're the leader of our tribe, right? Mm-hmm. You are expected to go speak with Naya, who's the leader of John's tribe, you know? Right. And if we can't work it out, the leaders are expected to like be diplomatic and be like, get your boy in order, or we're gonna, and it's not gonna be pretty, and then everybody's gonna get hurt. And nobody, like crazily enough, nobody wants violence in there. You know, it's like one of the most oppressive, you know, least free environments, and they like don't want violence. So, but I
imagine violence gets pretty bad in prison.
Right, but we're all monkeys and we're all assholes, and no matter what happens, you stick two people in a room long enough, they're going to fight. So the idea is like the calmer heads, the leaders of each tribe, have to work it out and put their person in line. So how does that transpose onto a community or an agorist community?
So in the Freedom Cell Network, they have that same thing, right? Mm-hmm. You have your 8-person inner cadre, and you have regional cadres, and if somebody is a bad actor in one of these smaller communities, you put it back to the community to deal with. You don't go cancel that person. You say, you know, talk to Fred. Fred's being creepy. Fred needs not to be creepy. And then they can talk to Fred, and if Fred doesn't change, they can push Fred out, because the risk is your immediate community around you will be disassociated if you don't fix the bad actor.
And that's what happens in the prisons. If Naya can't put John in order and you can't put me in order, then you're basically like, you're putting our whole tribe at risk by doing this. And, you know, like if you don't fucking chill out, we're gonna give you to them, basically, and you're gonna have bad things happen to you, and we ain't got your back, you know, because you were in the wrong. And the tribal leaders will sit and talk and figure out what actually happened with those two guys, you know, and so you're basically telling me the exact same thing. And I think that's our natural way of doing things. Interesting story about crows. You know why they call it a murder of crows?
No.
Because when they have conflict, the two crows that are in conflict will sit in like a clearing, and all the crows around will sit in the tree. And they know this because a research scientist, whatever they call a bird watcher scientist is, they watched and they saw these two crows down there in the field. And if those of you who are
I'm in the meeting
on radio can't see, I've got one hand over here, the other hand over here, and they squawk, not at each other, but they squawk to the trees, to all the birds. Mm-hmm. And then one says their point, then the other one says their point, and then all the birds start squawking, and then it's decided, and then whoever's in the wrong, all the birds attack that other bird that's wrong and kill it, basically.
It's very decisive.
Yeah, it's like being in
decisive and final.
But that's why they started calling it a murder of crows, because they would murder the wrongdoer in whatever conflict there was.
Wow.
Thankfully, we as humans don't have to resort to that.
Yeah, not yet. You know, something we do in our community, and we're small, right, is we have a foundation and an expectation of open and clear communication.
Yeah.
And expectation of goodwill. So when there is conflict or tension, you know, in the moment, we may not talk about it, but the expectation is like, when this happens, this is how I feel, or this is a boundary I need to have in place. If you don't respect my boundary, this is the consequence that will happen. And that's worked really well here. And it's coming in with the expectation. Like I like Diana, like my alone time. And so if you live near me and you want to be my friend, it needs to be okay with you if you walk up to my house for me to say, great to see you, I need to be alone, bye. And it doesn't mean I hate you. It just means right now is not a good time. And if people's feelings are hurt in that situation, then their feelings are going to be hurt a lot.
Yeah.
Here. So, yeah. It looks like Naya or Nia. How do I say your name?
I think it's Naya.
No, Nia.
Nia.
Damn, I was wrong. Sorry, Nia. But I think Diana had something to add before we get to her. Yeah, you wanted to say something, Diana?
Yeah, I just wanted to make like this observation. So you mentioned different systems, Xavier, and it was really good to observe everything, because life is that. Life is everything. And in the end, nobody can think for us, neither can we think for anybody. So again, like if I go back to my reason, my good reason, and I understand how am I feeling and that I am actually free, nobody can slave me because nobody can think for me. So I'm the only one that can decide what to think and how to feel in that moment, even if I'm super angry. And I actually observed that life has gives you no right, like we have no right of feeling bad. That's the fact. Like when we are scared, our heartbeat goes up, even if we don't want to. Like if we are scared, our body expresses it, right?
Yeah.
So eventually we will get sick if we start competing with others, if we give our power away. So we have to bring our power back to ourselves, use our freedom, our inherent freedom, the inherent freedom of life, our abilities to reason, to think, to remember what we thought and what we reasoned out, to understand what we really are, and then to judge, but to judge correctly. And then from that point of view, because actually if we see the system of the jails, like it's completely wrong. But that's not our problem, because we are not there. We have to leave them to solve their own problems, and we must solve our own problems through this process of reasoning. And then actually people get to feel that, and you actually get to not get in trouble. So that's my proposal. Always come back.
I think that's what we're all kind of trying to work towards, right? To be able to reason with one another, be responsible for our emotions, and have discourse and not take things personally. Yeah, so thank you for adding that. Appreciate that. All right, Nia, welcome.
Welcome to Unloose the Goose.
Hello. I was actually at Curtis's Q&A, and that's why I'm late. I was there, and then I was actually gonna go to sleep, and then I saw in the chat that Xavier posted this, and I'm like, yes, sure, why not?
Yeah. Yep. You had good things to add on the fireside chat that we did. So so tell us what you're doing with Curtis's technology or his methodology.
Yeah, I started building the microgreen growing area with my business partners, and we are about to operate actually. And currently, I'm trying to start the company, incorporate at the same time. That's where I am at.
Very cool. And where are you doing this?
I'm in the capital of Canada, Ottawa.
In our basement.
In the basement. Sorry. Yeah, but
in the basement in Canada.
A basement in Canada, in the capital, Ottawa.
Ottawa.
Perfect. Thank you. That was quite precise.
I want to add something. For last 3 days, I cannot sleep. I wake up with super excitement since I discovered you guys. I am I'm much more excited day over day, and it is affecting my sleep, and you are causing this.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. I don't think we're causing, I think we're just, having found Curtis was probably one of the greatest things you could do, because he just took life by the horns, and he's like, I like growing shit, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to figure out a way to do it really well. And he did, and he's a smart motherfucker, and he made a really good business out of it, and has been teaching others how to do it. And here you are doing what 99.9% of people don't do, which is take action. And now that you've taken action, you're getting super stoked. That excitement is you having your sovereignty back. That is you. Welcome to the Agora, right? you are now one of us, and you're here, building your own destiny and building a company. So very excited for you, and congratulations. That's freaking awesome.
Thank you.
Don't forget to take care of yourself while you're building your company. Ask me how I know.
Yeah, totally. There you go. And I don't suggest staying up 2.5 days in a row.
Yeah. Did you start seeing like shapes and stuff by the end of that?
Dude, it's wild. So what are you growing, Nia?
We didn't started growing yet, but I'm super interested to grow the regular microgreen types, as well as I want to add also cress, because I really like cress and I don't see in the market.
Yeah.
And I really want to add this variety. And what I'm gonna do with heirloom seeds as possible, and if not possible, non-GMO and fully organic.
Yeah. So I had a friend who was growing microgreens here in Florida as sprouts, not even microgreens, just sprouts. And he was selling them to restaurants for a lot of money. And he just had basically a closet full. And he had he had it cycled. He had not even a crack key system. It was just plants and soil. And he would wash them out, process them every week. Basically, he had a new crop because they were rotated. And he made a bunch of money as a side hustle doing that and selling it to restaurants and juicers, raw juice bars and stuff like that. And you can find, good luck. I think you're going to have a real good success with that.
I hope so. And I really want to combine it with renewable energy, moving out from the basement and moving out somewhere else and combining it. This is my goal.
Cool.
Combining renewable energy.
That's very cool. And how's the tax structure in Canada?
If we're incorporated, we have a flat 15% tax. But if we were to do it as a partnership or sole proprietorship, the tax is based on, I guess, your income.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if that would be combined with our regular jobs, and then that bump us up tax brackets. So we just figured with the future expansion that we have in mind, incorporated was the most logical way to go.
Yeah, so you can kind of silo your profits and then take the proper tax mitigation strategies in the corporation with your car, with your vehicle, the things that John was talking about. John brought up a point here. I don't know what the 1099 is in Canada, but he says, audits are triggered on certain things such as 1099 income. Why don't you tell us about that, John?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually going to type another question to our Canadian friends, Nia, and the other fellow there, because I don't know. I know in the U.S., state law has a lot to do with taxes as well as federal law. But going back to an earlier thread in the conversation about audits and that type of thing, generally the IRS is not, if they're going to go after somebody for an audit standpoint or go after a company from an audit standpoint, they're going to do so based on some type of trigger and a common trigger, because unfortunately, the IRS likes to go after very profitable small businesses. That seems to be just an evil thing that they like to do, right? Mm-hmm. But they will look at, if you are doing business in all USD, for example, and you're not in cryptocurrency, the companies that we work with, because we're working for them as an independent contractor, my company is an independent contractor for them. These are typically much larger companies who have to follow certain accounting procedures. They have to give us 1099s, and those 1099s show up on their corporate tax returns, and they can be traced back to the smaller companies that they deal with, such as ours. And if there is a discrepancy, and I'm sure there's some big IRS computer that does this, I know somebody somewhere is looking at this, they will look at the 1099s that these companies are sending out, and they'll balance them against the vendors that they're sending them to. And if they're sending big 1099s, and for the Canadian folks or other people who are not familiar with it, a 1099 is basically a statement that a company sends to the IRS saying, hey, we paid this independent contractor so much money. So the IRS knows how much money and income you made from a particular other company, a vendor in this
Sneaky
case.
Bastards.
I know, right? So they can balance the 1099 versus my company's corporate tax returns, and they can say, wait a minute, this company sent, you know, $100,000 to this other company, but they're showing that they made no, like, they're showing that they made no income, right? So that would be like us, like, not filing a tax return. So when that type of thing happens, when they see these crazy high profit margins and they're not seeing that income being recorded on our end, that's when they're typically going to audit something. So, you know, if you're doing everything in cryptocurrency, though, to Xavier's point, there's absolutely no way to audit that at all, 100%, period. Like, they just can't do it, right? Because there's no legal paperwork behind that. So I keep asking companies,
but
work
then
with,
they can just guess, and then they can say, "Oh, we just think you owe this," and it could be completely wrong, and you still.
Somebody just posted on YouTube. I just filed my annual theft, and they asked about crypto profits.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know how to define crypto profits, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I saw that too, and it was like a yes or no question. It's like, well, you can try to go find it.
So it burned in a boat, boat fire.
No, you were hacked and it was stolen.
Well, that's legit. Like, that's like legit. Like, I cried for 5 years. Like,
I bet you did. I'd cry too.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So in Canada, though, like, for provincial law, when you start a company, like, is it that 15% that was mentioned, that goes to the federal government in Canada, right? Are there also provincial taxes on top of that, or is it a like flat structure regardless of what?
Taxes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not 100% sure about that.
Hey, brother, what's your name sitting there next to Nia?
My name is Ben.
My business partner.
Yeah.
Hi,
what's up, Ben? Ben, the business partner. Do you, in Canada, do they have provincial taxes, like state taxes here?
Yeah. In Ontario, they combine the two and they call it HST, a harmonized sales tax. Yeah.
Oh,
it's
boy.
13%, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's 13%.
On top of the 15?
Well, no, so that's just what we like when we buy stuff in stores. That's
like
tax.
Sales tax. Yeah.
So when it comes to like the business itself, I'm not even sure how that part, like where the 15% would go, and we would be registering the business incorporated federally, not provincially. Nia looked into all the specifics about that. She's doing like the business side of everything, and I'm like working in the basement, like building stuff, renovating the basement, keeping car stuff running. Like she does all that stuff, and I do everything else.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I'm researching, but I'm also new to Canada, so as much as I can research or learn. That's
no, that's brilliant. I can feel the excitement and newness. So is that your basement there that you're in? It looks like it's all
this will be the veggie farm. Like in the back corner, we have the rack that we're gonna start some plants on this week.
Very cool. That's very exciting.
Hopefully it'll be like completely packed.
Yeah.
Is it going to be pink, like all the pink lights that they have now, the LEDs? That's so cool.
That's what we have, like some of right now. That'll probably be what we use.
That's very awesome. Well, congratulations. Anybody have any last thoughts? Do we have a Nicole question, like last question to go out with?
I don't have one from the audience, but I can make one up if you want me to.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So when you think of being an agorist or being in the Agora, how do you see it helping the world become a better place in the long run? Like, as we evolve into this, how do you see it making the world better?
Fireon.com.
Livingfreeintennessee.com.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
How about we go down the list as I've got it? I've got John first. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, John, you're on the spot, man.
Oh, man. I think it's the way, and I'm stealing this idea. This is not my original thought, but I think it's the way that everything normally works. Like the normal state of the world is free commerce between people in a voluntary way, right?
Yep.
And I think most people work best and are happiest and have the best lives and the best lives for their families and their communities when they are able to transact business and run a business, their own business, and live the life the way they want to. I mean, I constantly tell my friends who are thinking of making the leap of starting their own business, they don't fully understand how much freedom and just happiness in life comes with being a small business owner. They asked me, like, well, what would you have to do to go work for somebody else? Like, how much of a pay cut would you have to take? It's like, well, I'd have to be close to like losing my house and be destitute on the street, which would never happen because as a small business owner, I always find a way to make money. But like that is such an important thing that once you get a taste of that, of how the Agora works and how to make your own way, you can't really do without it. And if everybody did that, everybody would be so much happier. Or if maybe not everybody can do it, but if everybody who wanted to could do it, people would be so much happier and the world would be a better place. So,
Yes.
Yep.
Agreed. Good answer. Good answer. Now we've got Diana.
Well, I think I answered that question already, but I would make it like simple, just sharing our talents and appreciating everything we are and being grateful for where we are right now, what we have right now. I've seen like having a business, for me, it's not easy. Working for someone, it's not easy. Like every situation, everybody's living. We always find like reasons to feel bad, to regret, to have resentment, to blame, to whatever. So as much as we can do life now, I think we're going to be good and everybody's going to be learning from us too.
Yeah. Nia.
Yeah.
Ben.
If I could add on that too, that's a great point. And I think it was, I forget who it was in another Unleash the Goose talking about joy in life and how joy doesn't often, I forget what it was, but joy doesn't come from easy things or joy comes from doing the right thing and fulfillment and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And owning a business is not easy. It is, you can work less hours and work less just in general working for somebody else.
Yeah.
It is really hard to own your own business, but the level of joy is much higher. So spot on, Diana. I agree.
It's
totally.
like it's not work.
Yeah, I work like crazy hours now, and I'm like energized and ready to go because it's so much fun. Nia and Ben, how about you? Agorism, how do you see it affecting the world? Or just final thoughts, whatever. Like, what's that?
Can you define that word for me? I've never really heard it that much. I don't know.
See, I told you, Nicole. I told you.
We're not supposed to use that word.
Right. So
I feel like it kind of makes sense, but like, yeah.
Okay, so I didn't actually know what it was either when they asked me to be on an Agorist podcast. I was like, sure, what the fuck is that? And it was really just basically like, so the idea of agorism, as I understood it prior to this whole foray, was the free marketplace of ideas. Everybody gets freedom to speak, share, and the best ideas rise to the top, and we all make decisions together and, steer civilization. In the term that we're using it means disintermediating the state, or basically saying, like, if you and I are doing business, there is no reason why the state needs to collect taxes on it. There's no reason why they need to tell us whether we can or cannot sell to each other. It's sort of like the onus is on the buyer, buyer beware. If you're selling, shitty microgreens, it's on me to find out and know. It's not their job to make sure you're doing it right so that I don't get killed. That sort of stuff. Like, we're all grown-ups here and we can manage ourselves. So that's what agorism means in a blanketed sort of way.
Yeah.
Like anarchy, but like an elevated sort of like respectable anarchy,
Yeah. I think that sounds perfectly logical.
Right? I think the point that John made was pretty spot on. Like, this is how it's supposed to be, how free markets have developed throughout civilization. It's only like when civilization and government gets involved where they're like, this is how you need to do it. You got to stay in your pen,
I think it's a little bit similar to Michael Tellinger's contribution to them, right?
Yep. He's a good dude.
Yeah, and I see that, like, as he said, like how it's supposed to be, because everybody should act based on their passion and based on their excitement, getting out from the victim role and owning their own power and own health. and serving to each other, not putting the money as a priority, but a collectivism as a priority. So that's why I see this supporting the idea and making a brighter future, like it's Habitism Venus project, one step closer to the Venus project.
I love you. Thank you. That's really awesome. That's exactly why I'm here. Nicole, last final thoughts.
Well, you know, somebody had asked about analysis paralysis and getting started, which is a little separate from the topic of this show, but it's related because when you think about what agorism is, you've got one wall here, you've got one wall here, and you know those walls exist. And the agorist approach to that is, well, you can ask yourself, how do I go through that wall? But that can make a big mess, right? You can ask yourself, how do I go over that wall? But that takes a lot of effort. And a lot of times when you follow between the walls, there's this space that you can find to just be your natural self and to interact with people in natural ways. And that's kind of how I view agorism, is we're just finding those spaces where we can bring value to each other, bring value to our own lives. And if you're in analysis paralysis about starting something, whether it be an aquaponics system at your house, a microgreens business in your basement, you know, whatever it is that you want to get started, firon.com. Stop analyzing, start doing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people spend a lot of time worrying about the what if this regulation comes down and that regulation comes down, or if it gets really big. Well, it's not big yet.
Right.
And usually taking this cup and selling this cup to somebody that I've already drunk out of, so it's used, is not really something the regulators give a shit about, right? Get started, see if you can do it, see if you can bring value, and then yes, put some thought towards, how do I do this without going to Club Fed? Because you don't want to go to Club Fed, because apparently you're going to be divided by race, as Xavier Hawk was saying earlier. So those are my last thoughts.
Yeah. So very good. I love it. Similar, the analysis paralysis thing is it's huge. A lot of people are there. I was there for a very long time. And then when I got over the analysis paralysis and started doing and got beat up a bunch of times, it was still like, you know, like you either have to want it more than you want to breathe, or go be a cow and do whatever, you know, society gives you to do. And no judgment on that. Like, there's a lot of us, and there's a lot of different ways that we can all make livings and, you know, find our own little seed of happiness. But for me, it was like, we have to live by the values that we espouse, and we have to be building something, not just trying to resist or fight against something. And so I think each one of us here in this chat, and it's not random, right? It's like there's order to all of this, that everybody here brought a different example and are in a different path on the same, different spot on the same path. And, you know, whether you call it agorism or anarchism or libertarianism, it doesn't really fucking matter.
We're just living.
Exactly. We're trying to make the best out of this world and this life. And, you know, here we are. So thank you very much for joining us, John and Diana and Nia and Ben. Appreciate you guys.
Yep. So this has been episode 29 of Unloose the Goose, Practical Agorism. We are joined with some really cool listeners, Nia, Diana, Ben, and who else? John, there you are with your yellow background. Xavier Hawk and Nicole Sauce were on. If you want to support the podcast, you can do that by going to Unloose the Goose and signing up for our mailing list, or leave us a review on whatever podcast player you use, or like and follow us on YouTube. Share this with friends. We'd love to start expanding the reach here. We've grown to about 4,000 listeners, by the way. Xavier, did you know that?
That's dope. I love
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, and for all of the listeners, join us at t.me/unloosethegoose. And you too could join the podcast and be as one of our featured guests.
Awesome. Okay, guys. Have a good one.